Hey GlamFam, Linwood here, and today we're going to talk about how mental health, anxiety, depression, stress, things along that line can all impact your hair growth or hair loss. Let's dive in. Now I'm going to be completely real with you. This video is not really going to be my usual video. It's going to be a little bit more open, and my hope is that if you struggle or you're battling with any of these issues, that you're able to find some reasonable solutions or potential solutions that help you out. Not just your hair, but your health as a whole. I understand this is a hair channel, but if we don't take care of the body holistically, the hair does not benefit. And I see so often people are constantly asking me what product they should be using to make their hair grow, to make their hair grow back in, what vitamin or supplement they should be taking to make their hair grow faster. And meanwhile, the things that they're doing are detrimental to their health as a whole, and their hair is suffering as a result. Or they're ignoring the needs of their body, the need for nutrition or rest or whatever that thing may be, and they're seeing such a drawback, which only further negatively impacts their mental health. And it just becomes this horrible cycle that just feels like it is a downward spiral. And when you're already feeling low, the last thing you need is to add something else to the top of that, or to add additional fuel to the fire. All of that being said, my goal here today is to share with you some of my experience, and hopefully if you didn't know that you were in some of these spaces, it'll help to enlighten you to that. I'll share with you the things that worked for me, and don't get me wrong, I won't pretend to be an expert, but I will say there's certain things where experientially you go through them and you find what works. And if someone had shared with me a year ago certain things that are working for me now, it would have made a massive difference. I also need you to understand that I'm speaking from the place of experience, not just in the space of dealing with mental health issues and things along that line, but dealing with the negative drawbacks of them. So you guys know, usually like I have the dips here. That's pretty typical. They've been there my entire life. It's not receding, it's just my hairline. But if you'll notice, there's now this dip up through here. Literally all of that is hair loss. It's happening over here as well, not quite as bad. I lost a good degree of hair in the center of my head. My nails thinned out significantly, where they literally have ridges in them now. Thankfully, they're almost completely grown out because of the fact that I've been able to balance some of these issues. But I'm not here to try to sell you anything. I literally don't have anything to sell. Now, if you notice, I'm not in my studio. I wanted this to be more relaxed. I want it to be a space where I feel comfortable, which is my living room, and this is my sanctuary. And I will tell you that one of the biggest things is finding a space in your life, your home, wherever it may be, that adds to that sense of calm. I call my home my sanctuary. Majority of the times I have lo-fi, chill music playing throughout the day that kind of helps me to relax and just sets the tone for how it is I'm looking to feel throughout that day. I have automated and systemized so much of my house. It is now a smart house. I have the smart thermostat, I have the Google devices, all of that type of stuff, just so that way I can have things set on a routine. My kids wake at a certain time, their lights come on automatically. I have music that plays throughout the house when they get up. All of that just takes a little extra off of my plate. But let's talk about how I got here. So a good degree of you may well know that I am now divorced, and it was not something that I expected to happen, nor was it in my list of wants, to be quite honest. I spent a long time off balance, and it wasn't until I'd say maybe summer that I started feeling some level of balance. But it really wasn't until about 2 months ago, if that long, that I started really noticing some huge differences in my level of rest and being able to balance out, my emotions being more balanced, anxiety being significantly reduced, all that. So I want to deal with what these different spaces can look like and how they can impact your hair, as well as your nails. And then I want to talk about things that I did to be able to help out with those things, if you don't mind. When I found myself in the beginning spaces of depression, I was devastated, to be quite honest with you. And I found myself oftentimes going through the routine and struggling to do things that I used to take a ton of pride in. I was still brushing my teeth, but I was not regularly washing my face. I would get in the shower and let the water beat off of me while I cried. And to be quite honest with you, it was the most I could do to put some soap on this body. It was the most I could do. I would not be able to tell you how long it was before I shampooed my hair. I was just letting the water run through my hair, just letting the water beat on me. And something about that seemed like it always released something in me where I would have the most meltdowns in the shower. It came to a point where I began to realize that this is why you saw so many people come out of COVID with severely matted hair, where you could tell it's been in this same ponytail for months. And I really genuinely did not understand what it meant to be in such a place of emotional and mental struggle where certain basic care tasks no longer felt basic. They were overwhelming, or they just simply were not prioritized. I can tell you from my experience, I was in such a state of depression, and I was romanticizing my demise, trying to avoid certain words for the sake of YouTube and all that. But I was romanticizing my demise so much so that it became a point for me where honestly, I didn't have the energy to do things like wash my face and care about my appearance superficially. I did not have the energy to shampoo my hair. I felt like so much mental energy was on trying to still be there for everyone else, trying to figure out what the next step looked like. And honestly, to be very frank, so much of my energy was spent on choosing my next breath. And that was a battle. And if you've ever been there, if you've ever been in the space of romanticizing, I want you to know you're not alone. I don't want you to feel like you have to be ashamed of that. And I definitely don't want to stigmatize that. That is not what I'm here for. But I think a lot of times in those spaces, we kind of tend to lose sight and we feel some level of shame around those basic care tasks that we're not doing. We feel as though we're somehow less than, or we're not enough, we're not doing enough. And we're down talking ourselves on top of the fact that you already feel like trash. We can be our own worst enemies. So what helped me out in that space is honestly, I got a therapist. Now, I know right now probably seems like the spot to put an ad where you're like, and now get BetterHelp, blah, blah, blah. I'll be honest with you. I tried BetterHelp. It was not a good fit for me. I do know some people that it worked well for, but I particularly didn't care for it. Now, to be extremely real, I did not give it a ton of time. I didn't bounce around from person to person. I got on there and thought, this is going to be great. This is going to be helpful. I found a therapist on there, and that therapist really was not the best. It wasn't a great experience. So that didn't work out well for me. And I will say, in the space of dealing with mental health and finding a therapist, you may have to date a couple before you decide who you're going to marry. But I will say, thankfully, a friend of mine was like, you know what, I know a really good therapist I think you would enjoy, and they came to me on a recommendation. I'll be honest with you, I was not completely comfortable going into it, especially because my therapist was a male and I would have preferred a female therapist. But when I tell you, I adore my therapist. He is amazing, and he's better than literally anything I could have asked for on any app. I won't go into a ton of details in terms of the spaces of all the ways that it's better, but I prefer in-person therapy over virtual therapy any day. And he has been so personable and fantastic. And so I will say, if you have the resources to be able to do therapy, therapy is a great thing. If you don't have the resources to do that, you can do things like celebrating recovery and things like that, that allow you to have some sort of group sessions where you're able to have a program or steps, or be able to talk to around the issues that are troubling you, so you're no longer struggling in those spaces in the same manner that you were before. I do know a couple people who have done that. I personally have not taken part in Celebrating Recovery, but just so you know, Celebrating Recovery allows people to recover from all forms of hang-ups, trauma, abuse, substance abuse, whatever the case may be. And it allows you to do it in a atmosphere that's really more group-led, and it's Bible-based. So I don't have a ton of resources there because I'm not a mental health professional, and I won't pretend to be. I'm just sharing my experience. On top of going through spaces of depression, I found myself at the extremes of anxiety. And I'm talking about the points of anxiety, like I'll say I did not realize I had anxiety for Lord, I never knew, honestly. I've always had issues to a certain degree with my gut, but I've never felt like that butterfly in the stomach. I do public speaking, and I was singing and preaching and speaking and doing engagements, all sorts of things, and didn't ever feel like I was nervous getting up and speaking. I still don't mind speaking. I do it all the time, especially here on camera and things of that nature. But when I found myself at the extremes of anxiety, and I'm talking about the extremes where you could swear you're having a heart attack, where you feel like your throat has constricted, where you feel like someone's sitting on your chest and you can barely breathe. You feel like your heart is fighting to get out of your chest. Breaths are short. feeling hot like you might pass out or breaking into a sweat. I've been there. Unfortunately, in that instance, there's a lot of stress on the body. And usually when you're at that point, you are over the edge. You're not almost over the edge, you're over the edge. You just don't realize it oftentimes until then. And a lot of times it's really hard to nail down what the one thing was that caused the attack, because you're experiencing anxiety on such a regular occurrence that you don't even recognize it anymore. If you're anything like me, you may not even realize that you're in a space of anxiety. You have to learn these signals and the signs that your body and your brain gives, because you don't recognize them. I don't feel them in the ways that I would expect to feel them. I have found out quite a bit in the last year, honestly. Found out that I have ADHD, and I found out that I struggle in the space of sensory overwhelm. And both of those were huge factors in the space of anxiety, my ability to be available to others, especially through physical touch and things like that, especially as it pertains to my children and just the manner of them being affectionate, things along that line. There are certain activities that, on top of therapy, honestly, that I had to start prioritizing a bit more in order to ensure that I could be well and that I could be okay. Now, I will say, if you're anything like me, anxiety may impact your gut, and it definitely did in my instance, where I was vomiting, I was having diarrhea, I was having severe cramps, my appetite was non-existent. I lost 26 pounds in literally 2 weeks. It was severe. And I'll say in that instance, that's when you start often seeing things like the hair loss. That's when you start seeing things like the nails thinning or having the ridges and things on there, because the body is trying to use what little bits of energy it has to keep those really important organs going, rather than keeping your hair looking good or your nails looking good and things like that. And I will say I'm very much one where I just kind of own it. Like when people have something to say about the cul-de-sacs or like this area here, I'm just like, yeah, let me tell you all about it. I'll tell you about it. Like, you don't have power over me in that space. No one ever will. But it is something that I had to adjust to. And if I'm being honest, no, I'm not completely satisfied with that. If it wouldn't come back or doesn't come back, I don't know if I'll sit up and be like, you know what, I'm gonna let my hair continue to grow out. I don't know if I'll be over here looking for whatever surgery options and all that to fix it. I have no idea, but I can tell you this, that's not my priority at the moment. My priority is my mental and emotional wellness and ensuring that I'm as balanced as possible, because I gotta be here tomorrow for my girls. I've gotta be here tomorrow to take care of them and to ensure that they are being led. And I have to make it a point to serve me better. I feel like there are a number of different things that I've done to help with anxiety, but the first thing for me was getting comfortable with no. Getting comfortable with hearing no, getting comfortable with saying no, getting comfortable with just not being available and prioritizing my rest and feeling like utter crap for it, because you know, you want to be there and you want to be available, and you're so accustomed sometimes to prioritizing the needs of others. But honestly, I think I got to a point where I was like, I cannot prioritize others when I am not well. Because the only thing it does is it continues to take from me, and I already have so little to give. Now, when I say I have so little to give, I'll just tell you, I'm in my villain era. So when I say I have so little to give, the thing I have very little to give starts with F. And I mean that. And if it bothers you, pray about it. But I will say that single mindset shift has done so much to save me, to save my well-being, to save my mentality. And it has made my life so much richer and better because I put me first. I even state when I have a need for space with my kids and things like that, when I'm dysregulated and I'm needing a moment, I need some time, I communicate that with them like, hey, I'm not okay right now. Can I just get a little bit of time for me to lay in the floor and have the lights off and listen to brown noise and focus on my breathing? And you would be amazed at when you make your needs known, how people have a tendency to oblige those needs. But so often we feel guilty about asking for them. So saying no, getting comfortable with no. It doesn't have to be a hard no. It can just be a, no, I could really use more rest tonight. No, I'm not quite feeling up to it. No, I really appreciate you asking me, but I'm not gonna be able to today. It makes a big difference. Now, one of the reasons why anxiety, especially if it impacts your gut, can negatively affect the hair, the skin, and the nails is because your hair is made of 20 different amino acids. 9 of those are naturally occurring in your body already. But the other 11, they come from your diet. And if you're throwing up, you're having diarrhea, food is running straight through you, or your appetite just simply isn't there, I guarantee you that you're malnourished. And if you're malnourished, your body doesn't even have what it takes to create. So in that instance, if my body doesn't have what it takes to create, it's now burning up fat stores for whatever level of energy I need. And I'll tell you, when you are in that space of being depressed and anxious, you're exhausted. And then on top of that, that exhaustion seems like it fuels a dysregulation for me sensorily. It fuels a dysregulation emotionally, and it just makes things worse. That's why I'm here to share today. In the space of anxiety, not only did I find that in my instance, it was about learning how to say no, it was about setting a tone and setting an environment here. It was about taking the time to rest. It was about if I needed to go and get a massage, scheduling that massage and going to get it, which I'll admit I don't do that near often enough. But it started with setting expectations for myself of here's the issue, here's what I need to do. And while I may not be able to tackle all of that, what can I commit to? What small change can I do to make my life a little easier? Can I ask for more help? Can we divvy up chores around the house? Can I say that I need space? Can I give myself a point to just soak in a bath with magnesium salts? Just so I can relax at the end of each day. What is it that I need and how can I implement it in a way that it doesn't take from me but it gives back? It's really important. A lot of times you'll also notice if you struggle with anxiety and depression, you may have a picking or pulling disorder where it leads to things like trichotillomania, where you're rubbing or pulling, it's almost like scratching an itch and that hair is coming out with it. So managing that anxiety is really important. You heard me mention earlier laying on the floor or grounding myself in a dark room, so I'm depriving my senses and listening to brown noise. And you may have chuckled when I said brown noise. But brown noise is similar to white noise. It's just smoother sounding. It's not so scratchy. And it's fantastic for helping to bring you back to a space of being centered. It's fantastic for helping the body to relax or helping the brain to reset in my instance. And I will say that it's been a fantastic addition to my mental health routine. Now, admittedly, brown noise, I listen to it primarily at night when I'm trying to sleep, and I also listen to it when I'm feeling somewhat dysregulated. It's fantastic for both of those things. I'll also say that a huge thing is learning to realize when you are dysregulated and learning what those signs mean. So for me, the first thing that I tend to notice is my gut. I always heard people say like, hey, if you have diarrhea, that's not normal, that's not healthy, things like that. And I was like, I don't know about y'all, but I'm not sick when I get diarrhea. And it still never clicked to me. Like I'm hearing people say this, it never clicked to me that that was not healthy until I found myself in a space where I was experiencing the extremes of those things and then realizing like, wait a minute, this was my body's fight or flight response. Literally, I remember recording a YouTube video years ago where I had fallen and busted my nose open, had to get stitches. And I remember talking about how like, I was so calm, bleeding from my face. I felt hot. And out of nowhere, I was like, I gotta poop. And for some of you, this may be too personal. Suck it up. I don't care. Because if it's too personal for you to hear about bodily functions that are attached to mental health issues that could be causing you issues or concern, that tells me that you probably didn't need this video. It probably wasn't for you. But for the person that this is for, I hope that you get something from it. That's the only reason why I'm busy being transparent. I realized looking back, you know, the whole hindsight 2020 situation, 2020 feels like a curse word now, but looking back, I realized like, wow, my body has regularly exhibited signs like this in high stress situations. Like you literally nearly broke your nose, burst your nose wide open, are in need of stitches, you're bleeding from the face, and you gotta poop. And it never occurred to you that when you're in high stress situations that this is your body's first response. It's a response that's attached to anxiety. Thanks to know. So when I noticed there are certain types of situations that lead me there, like I'm easily triggered by sound, like really noisy and really busy environments. I don't do well in social spaces or around social gatherings. So I'm very much one where if someone invites me to a space, I want to know who's going to be there. I am trying to form my exit before I get there in case I need it. And that's just real. But I did find something that helped me out massively with that struggle, especially as it pertains to sound. And it's called loop earplugs. Not at all sponsored. But the loop earplugs, I'll show you what they look like. I like them because they help out with just muffling noise. They look a little bit like a piercing. So it's like an ear decoration, and it doesn't take away a ton from the aesthetic or look of things. I can still hear, but it just muffles sound of it, so it's not quite so overwhelming. And when I get to a point where I am feeling dysregulated or where my senses are all over the place, I place them in. It looks like this from the side. And this just kind of helps to muffle things so I can filter certain things a bit better. Because I notice that when I'm overwhelmed sensorily, the lights appear too bright, smells are really strong, sounds are much more intense, physical touch is too much. And these were all spaces that I was struggling with on a regular basis and did not realize that that's what this was. I felt like the brightness and the pressure I was feeling in here was sinus pressure. So I was taking pills for sinuses, not realizing that often it was accompanied by a sensitivity towards smell and so many other things where it could easily mimic a migraine just without the headache aspect of it. It was confusing. And now that I know what it is, I rarely have to take anything for allergies because I know, hey, I'm dysregulated. I need to find center. So I'll place both of them in and I'm still able to function. Now, I don't have a grasp on how loud I'm speaking right now. I can hear me a little louder in my head, so I'm probably not gonna leave these in for the duration of the video, but I just want you to see that they can be discreet. And honestly, even if people know what they are, like the people who are in my circle and they see these in, it's not something I feel any sort of way about. It lets you know, hey, I'm a little dysregulated, I'm trying to balance out. If you see these in my ears, go easy on me. Give me some downtime if need be. Try to take something off my plate. And people who are partnered with you and are aware and care about you and love you, allow them the space to be able to help if they are willing to do so. And if you have that luxury. So those helped out massively with trying to ensure that I am as emotionally balanced as possible. The last thing that I did that helped me out so much so that I would honestly say for me, it's been life-changing, is I was scrolling through the tiki. Y'all know how TikTok goes. You can't sleep. My sleep has always been trash. And a lot of times it was one of those things where I could sleep for 6 to 8 hours and wake up and still feel completely exhausted. Well, I found out online that a lot of the things I was struggling with anxiety, with sensory regulation, with mood regulation, with poor sleep quality, depression, all of that could be attached to a magnesium deficiency. And so I started researching magnesiums, and I found out that there's a difference in magnesiums, and it deals with whether or not they're bioavailable. So if you've ever tried like magnesium citrate, baby, magnesium citrate to me is the devil. It will have you on the toilet clinging for dear life, calling on the name of the Lord for mercy in a cold sweat, ready for him to just take you home to glory. No one wants that. And so whenever I heard magnesium, that's what I correlated it to, until I found out that that's because it was not as bioavailable, which meant that the body didn't absorb it as well. So if it doesn't absorb well, it goes straight through, and that's why it acts as a laxative. In my instance, I found that magnesium glycinate was a bit better. By the way, I'll link this and I'll link the loop earplugs in the description box down below. Again, this video is not sponsored, but these things help me so much that if there's a chance that they may help you to regulate and to find your balance, I want you to have an access to those things. I want you to know exactly what I'm using that helped. And if that doesn't work for you, I apologize. But if there's a chance, it's worth it. And if you have tried these things, or if you do try these things and they do work for you, please put it down in the comments, because I don't want people to just hear from me. I don't want people to feel like I'm trying to sell them on something. I will tell you, those things are horse pills, they're ginormous, but I take them literally every single day now because it did not make it easier for me to fall asleep. I won't lie to you. It made it to where I would go to sleep, and the only thing I can say is that the value of my sleep was so much richer, where I would wake up and feel like, and that's never been me. Like, you know how you see like the things where people wake up and they're like, that was literally never me. I'm the person who usually wakes up like Squidward, and I work my way up to SpongeBob in about 5 hours. I don't wake up as SpongeBob. To wake up now and not feel like I'm constantly needing to hit the snooze button so worth it. To not have that midday crash, so worth it. And the fact that I'm getting a richer quality of sleep means that my emotions are so much easier regulated. It means that I'm not experiencing so much sensory overwhelm. It means I'm not struggling as much with anxiety, and then I can easily identify that causes anxiety. I'm having some stomach issues when I'm in situations like that. So what I do is I limit my exposure to things that cause me anxiety, or I mitigate those spaces. So another thing that I have that works really well for me in public spaces especially is my AirPod Pros. They have noise cancellation on them. I absolutely love them for it. Again, not sponsored, but the noise cancellation has been fantastic, especially in places like grocery stores or Chuck E. Cheese's or places that are really noisy and busy that I may have to go. I may have to be there for whatever purpose. And like, I'm not gonna tell my kids that they can't experience childhood or go to the park or whatever, but I can muffle the sound quite a bit more and ensure that I can still visually keep an eye on them without getting to a space of sensory overwhelm. All of this being said, it is my hope that by me sharing this, that if you struggle in any of these spaces, that you are able to have some potential solutions now that would work for you. Just to kind of give you some context here, if you choose to do CR, or Celebrating Recovery, I believe if I can find the website for it, I'll put that down in the description box below if that's a resource that you would prefer. I'm not putting any links for BetterHelp because, again, that did not work well for me, though I know several people that has worked well for. But therapy can be a little bit more pricey, so CR, if you're looking for that as a free option, that's free. If you are looking for like the loop earplugs, they usually range between I think $25 and $40 depending on the kind that you get, and they have several different pieces on here so you can muffle sound more or less and all of that. I'll link that in the description box. This one here I got from a local store, I think, and it was $25 when I got it, and I don't know how many pills. Oh, there's 90 pills in here. I take 3 a day, so it's basically a 3-month supply. So yeah, I know they have it on Amazon and they have it like that's fully chelated and all that, so it's supposed to be better. I'll put a link to that in there as well. But this one is magnesium glycinate. It is like when I tell you this baby here, I should be trying to look for a way to either sell or benefit off of the sale of this here, because this has literally changed my life. But just so you're aware of how much those things may potentially cost. And I'll tell you now that it costs you so little to learn how to set better boundaries, to learn how to say no or not this time, or just being honest with the people in your life about what that experience is like. And what it looks like when you're dysregulated, what it feels like when you're dysregulated. Because I'll say, until I started being acquainted and really well acquainted with it myself, I genuinely didn't understand it in the same ways. To know it intimately now, it has shifted a level of empathy where anytime I find that people are struggling with anxiety, when I have students struggling with anxiety, I will emotionally disrobe for them and let them know, hey, you see these spots where my hair is gone? Do you see these areas where my nails are? It wasn't long ago that I was in that space, and it wasn't long ago that I was struggling. There's still days where I'm having a hard time, but this helped me, and it may help you. Here, let me get an alcohol wipe. I'll clean my earplugs and you try them out. And if they work for you, go get you some. My coworkers are now all like, I gotta get me some of that magnesium. I have referred people to my therapist, all that. And so my hope is that if you find yourself in a position where you've been like this, that this helps you. But then my hope is also that if these things help you, that you'll recommend them to other people. That's the impact I would like to make. And I feel like if some of the suffering and the battle that I had to go through was for that, I don't even know if it was for this purpose, but this is a purpose I'm choosing. I can't sit up and try to act like, oh, well, my life fell apart and this is the reason why. It was so I could do this. It wasn't for that. But that's what I'm going to give it purpose to, is ensuring that through my life experience, someone else doesn't have to experience things as long as they would have, or they may not have to experience them at all, or they learn the signs and the triggers. They learn how to love someone in their life better because no one should have to be in a space of suffering when there's help, especially when there's affordable help, that you don't have to spend an arm and a leg and get all these diagnoses and all that in order to check out and fix. I'm on no medications, despite the fact that, yes, I did find out I have ADHD. I found out and started researching systems that work a bit better for me. That's why I have all the Google devices and things now. It helps me to stay more organized and functional, because that can be stressful on your personal relationships as well. And I have found that just little things like that have made me better for those that I love. Little things like that have made me feel like a better human, and have made me realize that self-care is not selfish, and that self-care is more than just getting a massage. Self-care is not aftercare. It's not what you do when you are stressed out. Self-care is what you do to prevent yourself from getting to that space of being stressed out and anxious and all that. It's the boundary setting. Self-care is having the routine that does you well and that feeds your soul. So if you're experiencing hair loss, hair thinning, nail thinning, skin breaking out, low energy, depression, anxiety attacks, hunger pangs, anxiety attacks that feel like heart attacks, all of that, I want you to know that there are resources and there's help, and that you're not alone. Your life is worth it. It's worth living. And that you mean so much. That your life means so much. And I get that in spaces of overwhelm, it can feel like it means so little, and it can feel like it holds so little value. But just know that it's worth so much more than you know. And a lot of times, if you're finding yourself where you're sleep deprived and all that, I guarantee you, you're not thinking rationally. You're thinking emotionally, and those emotions, while they're excellent tools, they're excellent indicators, I want you to realize that sometimes those emotions are just indicators of where you need better boundaries. They are not indicators that you need to be in a different plane, if you understand what I'm saying. So I call you the GlamFam, and I want to ensure that it's not just about being glam here. I want to ensure that it's about that fam, that community, that aspect, because honestly, if we were family, I would be talking to you about these things regularly. I would want you to know, because I care. And right now, GlamFam, I call you fam. I want to treat you like that as well. So I hope that this video has been beneficial, whether for you or for insight on what a loved one is potentially going through. I hope that it helps out someone. And even if it doesn't get any views, even if it doesn't help anyone, I don't want it to be said that I didn't try. I hope that this video finds you well. And if it doesn't, I hope that something was shared in this video that leads to your wellness. But until next time, take care. God bless. Stay glam. And you know I love you, boo. Bye-bye.